Hello everyone, it's Dan Tortora here with you, and very happy to be, as always, at Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay. We bring you The Light Between Us, which is our exclusive segment focusing on faith, adversity, rising above that adversity, and finding good people to share this thing we call life with. So I'm very proud to have as my guest here today, George Mikhael, and myself, Dan Tortora, of course, here with The Light Between Us every month. Brought to you by Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay. We're out at Chick-fil-A Clay today. Awesome. On 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool. And I call it the home of the massive drive-thru and the big parking lot. So happy to be here with you, George.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you and I met when I was here eating.
Yeah.
So we met a few weeks ago. What brought you to Chick-fil-A? How'd you end up here?
There's a church friend I have, and he was like, you know the old Uno that was here over on Route 31?
Yeah.
Oh, guess what, George? They're turning it into a Chick-fil-A. I was like, wow. And for context, I only ever dined at Chick-fil-A once or twice before I started working here. So I had very little familiarization with the brand. So I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. So I applied to a bunch of places, didn't hear back from any of them. And then I got offered an interview, and I was like, okay, this might be it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting into Chick-fil-A is the same as most other teenagers my age. I just needed a job.
And so for you, like you said, you only dined once or twice at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
When you got the interview and you came in, what was that experience like?
It was amazing. As with most people, and you know, this is gonna sound overblown, but I'm just surprised by how nice everyone is. You know, people always say it all the time, but I was in the case of, like, you know, I come in and I have preconceptions with fast food and quick service restaurants, and then those were completely blown out of the water.
Yeah.
And you know, similar people have the same experience. So
you come here, you get the job. When you got the job, did they tell you right on the spot? Did they call you? When did you find out?
Paint
the picture.
So I was led to believe that if you got the second interview with Jimmer, because you had a first interview with one of Jimmer's numerous directors, and then if you got the second interview, you were in, as far as I was aware. And I was like, wow, because I had my first interview. I was at school. Right, and I sped all the way over to Cicero, like moved completely fast to get over here, and but yeah, so
I'm loving the drive-thru right now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, but I was 30 minutes late to the first interview.
Yeah,
and it was with Maria Trexler, who in at least the Chick-fil-A Cicero and Clay kind of community is known for being very big on punctuality, as well as Jimmer is. So yeah, the people who introduced me to the interview, they didn't think I had a chance because I was late. However, I said something right by the grace of God, and you know, I got in. So
being here after only experiencing Chick-fil-A a couple times as a guest, how would you describe it now?
It's a beautiful thing that we've created here, that Jimmer has created here. And, you know, I can't speak for other Chick-fil-A's, but I know Cicero and Clay, they've built a lot here. And I'm happy to be a part of it. Because, you know, it's very rare that you find a brand nowadays that is thoroughly identified with the faith of Christ. And to have that, and to have people who value professionalism, you know, God-fearing, you know, it makes it easier to come into work, and it makes it easier to be proud of what you're doing.
When you're working for a place, George, like Chick-fil-A here, where, like you said, they care about God. They don't hide that they care about God. And it's a community of people that can talk about their faith, talk about the relationship with Jesus Christ, talk about, you know, just living a life where you're walking in tow with God. What does that mean to you every day, that you don't have to hide who you are when you come to work?
It's a beautiful thing. And, you know, because I already come from a position, well, at least my parents do. The Middle East is not very conducive to Christianity, for it to thrive and for it to be as prominent as it is in the States, at least. So to come here and to already be accepted and be allowed to go to church without fear of something happening, and then be, like in my case, coming to work and knowing that people share similar values as I do, it's a comforting thing.
You know, and you discussed the Middle East, coming from Egypt, your family. Why? I mean, when you talk about how it was hard for your parents, you know, obviously to practice Christianity in the Middle East. When they came here, was that really the main reason, is they wanted to be able to be who they are? I mean, why did they tell you that they made the journey here?
There's two reasons. And then one of them is obviously being the freedom to express the faith. And then the second reason is because, you know, as many faults as people like to say it has, America is still one of the greatest places to come live in the world right now. And, you know, a lot of people have their issues with it. There's political instability sometimes. But as someone who you know, associates with people who've gone through the immigration process, who know what life is like back at home compared to as it is here, there is no better place to live. To express your faith, to do well financially, to build a life that's good for you and that glorifies God. There's no better place.
So you look at the positives of America, which a lot of people don't talk about these days.
Yeah, because, you know, the brain is more fine-tuned to pick up negativity anyways. So, you know, people will, yes, they will often talk about the negatives, but you really gotta look at the bright side compared to some other nations. And Egypt has a lot of issues, I can tell you right now. I visit the country every 2 years to visit family, and it is a shock and a half, like the way things are here compared to how they are there.
How would you describe the differences between the two?
Christianity is not very respected over there. It used to be really bad, like danger of getting hurt or killed bad. It's not as bad anymore because the government has taken action against people who commit crimes against Christians over there. Second thing is the country, you know, is not as financially successful as the United States is. You know, there's a lot of people who live in poverty in Egypt. There's a lack of waste management in Egypt. You know, there's a lack of garbage disposal. You know, all these infrastructures that we've come to accept as regular in the United States. There's not much of that. You know, the streets are littered with garbage, the homeless. It's not great. It's not great. And, you know, I can speak, like, from having talked with my dad about Egypt. I mean, he came from the bottom 1%, and he could only tell me stories about how, you know, going days without food, you know, not being able to pay for school, and now he's a physician. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I told him the same thing. I told him the same thing. That's insane. When you look at it, when you look at the whole story, it's insane.
Going from poverty, not eating, in a different country, and where his faith wasn't accepted, to coming to a place where he could be himself, practice his faith, become a professional, and take care of his family. I mean, I would imagine looking at your parents must remind you every single day that hard work, faith, dedication, and positivity can get you anywhere.
You can, and You know, there's two things that Christ said during his ministry that stick with me sometimes. Is he said that life is not easy, number one.
Yeah.
And people will persecute you falsely for my sake and say all manner of evil things against you, and that there will be lots of burdens to bear. But he also says the burden of being a believer is light at the same time, which is kind of a dichotomy in and of itself. Being faithful, loving God, keeping God the focus of what you do is the hardest but the most easiest thing you can do at the same time.
Well, you know, you mentioned that, and I tell people all the time, the only thing that God promised in the Bible for believers is persecution, is to go through. He didn't promise happiness on earth.
Yeah.
You know, he promised in heaven.
Yeah.
That's, you know, everything would obviously be for something, but, you know, I mean, I have to remind myself that sometimes, like, God said, if you follow my son, you may be persecuted, you may be treated similar, you may hear things, you may have things thrown at you, you may have to endure pain to do the right thing. And at the end of your life, where you go would all be worth it. That everything that you endure on earth, your riches, you know, lie in heaven.
Absolutely.
And it's, I think a lot of people can be short-sighted. And in today's America, we don't talk about God as much as far as, you know, media-wise and whatnot. Yeah. And I take it on me to always do that in the media. And I got asked a question, well, a few different things over time. One person said, why don't you take God off of your social media profile? And I said, no. And he said, well, you probably get more followers. I said, I don't want more followers. I want God to have more followers. And I would rather have nobody and put him in my profile than have everybody and hide who I am. And I think you see in society, George, that the more we take God out of society, society parallels that downward fall. Yep. And it's the more we've kind of pushed God away, the more society crumbles.
Yeah.
So what can we do in America? You know what it's like to see Egypt. You know what it's like to see a country that doesn't open up to Christianity. So what can we do? What would you like to see?
I'm gonna preface what I'm gonna say by saying this. I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Yeah.
And a lot of denominations, as well as Orthodoxy, refer to God as God the Logos. And Logos means the word, and Logos is also the Greek word for logic.
Yeah.
So I've always said that God is the logic of the universe. You know, God is the source of morality, of goodness, of, you know, direction. And what I would like to see is there are always going to be people who are going to not be faithful. Naturally, there are always going to be people who choose to take their own path, and they're entitled to that. God gave them free will. What I would like to see is more coexistence between the non-believers and the believers. And something I learned is I'm a second-ranked deacon at my Orthodox church, so I have to do a lot of Bible study and reading the Scripture.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed is there, you know, some Christians say the church shouldn't be inclusive. I think it has to be what you mean by inclusive. If we show love to those who come in, absolutely, the church should be more inclusive. I mean, Christ, while he walked the earth, sat with prostitutes and sat with tax collectors and sat with all kinds of sinners. Yeah. But I think the distinction here is that it is they who went away changed, not Christ. In the same way, the church should be the same. The church should welcome all kinds of people. Yeah. We should welcome them with open arms. But when it comes to what we believe in, they should go away changed, not the church.
You know, and I love that. You know, open your doors to everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hope that you can open some hearts,
yeah,
open some minds, but it's not the church's job to turn away. It's a person's choice.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's a classic case of you must separate the sin from the sinner.
Yeah, true.
And because we're all sinners, and we all make decisions we don't want to make, and do things that, you know, in our right mind we would never do.
Yeah.
But it's you know, I've always said being a Christian means I'm loved by God, but that doesn't make me superior to anyone, you know.
Yeah.
It just means I'm a follower of Christ.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I want the vision of what a Christian should be is someone you can come to be loved, to be appreciated,
to not be judged.
To not be judged, absolutely. And, you know, and absolutely there are Christians who have a hard time with that, because they want to see the world go in a certain direction, and when they don't see that direction agree with the way Christ wants the world to go in, there's a little animosity there between believers and non-believers, you know. And it's difficult because it's one of those things that I think is going to keep happening till the end of time, is this disconnect between the believers and the non-believers, you know. In isolated scenarios, it's a lot easier for believers and non-believers to get along, but in the big picture,
yeah,
it's very difficult.
Why do you think some people either have stopped believing or have never started to believe in God?
There's so much distraction nowadays. And there's some people who don't have a choice, you know, while there's some people who simultaneously have all the choice and they choose not to, you know. At least in the more, you know, in my case, in my experience, Islam, when they want to ensure that their followers remain faithful to the Islamic faith, the threat of death is never too far. And, you know, I'm not saying all Muslims are like that. Absolutely not. There are many God-fearing, good-hearted people who practice the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
And, you know, in fact, I respect the Muslims because they are so dedicated. But there is, you know, in the more extreme side, in some areas of the Middle East, it is very dangerous for you to leave your faith. So, you know, people who want to become Christian, at least in the Middle East, it's so hard. It's so hard because it's natural. It's a natural fear to want to continue living, you know, and it's, you know, we always talk about the martyrs and, you know, how much respect we have for them, but you also have to remember what they did is not easy. And going back to the distraction, we have all this social media and, you know, all these different political viewpoints that, and you know, spiritual viewpoints that tear us from one way to another. The way I like to describe it is the luckiest people to have ever lived were the people who saw Christ while he was alive. Because you can't see a man change the world like that and not believe.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. And, you know, my parents always say how I would have loved to live in that time. You know, I count the disciples and the apostles and everyone who saw Jesus while he was walking the earth as the luckiest people in biblical history and in the world's history, you know. It's also a case of people needing to see to believe, which is a natural progression of being human. You know, it's not easy. Yeah. Sorry, I can't think of anything else.
No.
I'm trying to frame my responses in a...
No, you've been open, honest. You've moved me. You know, when I have conversations like this and I feel my faith improve, I have to, you know, give credit to not only you, but God speaking through you. And I would say that when you say you consider the luckiest people the ones that saw Jesus physically walk the earth, I would say if we treat people well, and we love believers and non-believers, and we are good to everyone, and we lead with love,
Absolutely.
and we lead with trying to understand, and we always seek to help, and we don't do an eye for an eye, it stands to reason that through our work, our deeds, our words, that people could see God walk the earth if we showed that to them.
It was one of the verses, I can't remember the specific chapter, but let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. Very important verse.
Yeah.
Very important.
And so for you, why do you believe?
Why do I believe?
Yeah.
You know, I've always said this world is arranged in such a perfect way. It couldn't have all been chance.
Very true.
The way this world works, and the way the human body works, and the way nature is arranged, and the science of how everything works is too complex to have been chance. It had to have been created by something greater, someone greater. And, you know, there's an argument that from both, you know, atheists and believers alike, that you can't believe in God and believe in science at the same time, and I say that's wrong. Because in my opinion, I mean, I love science. I'm a big chemistry, biology guy.
I'm big on astronomy. So
yeah. Science is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people are going to disagree with me and get furious at me when I say this. Science is an explanation of how God created the universe.
Yeah.
Science is an explanation of how God's creation works. That's the way I see it, you know. And my dad's a physician, which is a science in of itself, medicine.
Yeah. And,
you know, he keeps God at the focus every single time.
Who are the hands that guide the hands?
Exactly. You know, there's a surgeon at my church. His name is Dr. Ayman Iskander. Very well known. But, you know, he does amazing work. And I've always, you know, when you ask him, he always says it's God that guides him. You know, we're talking about people who pray the Lord's Prayer before they go in to do an operation because they know exactly the power that prayer has.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's why I believe this world is too perfect, too complex to be anything less.
Yeah. To happen by total chance.
Yeah, I think it's impossible. I think it's impossible.
Yeah, there's too many things that just seem to work, which I call God incidences.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't believe in happenstance. You just happened upon something.
Yeah.
Too many things have happened in my life that seem like they were there. They were put there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And there was something to take from those moments, those people, those experiences, those places. George, I don't know how to tell everybody we'll talk with you soon because I've been so moved by what you've said.
Oh,
I hope you'll come back.
Oh,
and do
awesome!
the show again.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it'd be a great honor.
But you know, from meeting you for a couple seconds and you being, hey, I think you're that guy that does the videos, and in my, you know, Isaac, we're like brothers. You know, sitting there that day, I was like, never in my life did I think I could be somewhere and it'd be recognized for something I've done work-wise. And for it to be something, you know, if it's going to be anything, something to connect it to literally just talking about God.
Yeah, no, I always told myself, when is it going to be my turn for one of these?
Well, George, it's it's an honor for me. Again, a God incident, not by mistake. And you have invigorated and fanned the flame of my faith today. And I believe that you've done that for other people, because in order to make this world better, you just got to get around good people, and you just got to love each other.
Yeah. It's the core of the Christian faith is love. There was, you know, I forgot where he did this, but St. John the Beloved, he went to a nation, and there was a gathering place, like a public place where the people would meet, and he would go give his sermon there.
Yeah.
And for days on end, he would go there, and he said again and again, "Brethren, love each other." Right?
Yeah.
And one day he went there, and he said the same thing, and someone asked him, "Why do you keep saying that?" Because if you let love drive what you're doing as a believer, you can have an amazing impact, and you know, you'll grow your spiritual maturity. You'll help other people grow their spiritual maturity, and you'll be doing the good works of Christ.
Yeah.
You know,
love each other.
Yeah, it's very simple.
Very simple. And I tell people this all the time. If you're agnostic, atheist, whatever you are, God is love. Love is God. So if you love your wife, if you love your children, if you love your husband, if you love your mom, your dad, then even if you think God isn't in your life, he's at the center of it.
Yes.
Because if you know love, whether you want to hear it or not, you know God.
Absolutely.
George, thank you, sir.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the light between us, and we look forward to seeing you again every single month, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And as we always end, God bless, no stress, do your best. Talk soon. Take care.